Hello and welcome back to my studio. Today we're going to be drawing this realistic eye, and we're going to be using some Prismacolor Premier coloured pencils to do this. They're a waxed based pencil and are perfect for blending layers. The first thing I like to do if I'm doing a drawing with an eye, whether it's a portrait or an animal drawing, is I like to get straight in and begin with the eye. If there's a piece of artwork that I'm doing that doesn't have an eye, I start with the background first, but I believe that this makes the drawing start coming alive, and it's the exciting part. I've used about 31 different Prismacolor pencils for this one due to all the colours in the eye and also the skin tones. I've sharpened with just a normal regular metal sharpener, and I'm using Strathmore toned grey paper. This is a mixed media paper that's thick. It's 300 GSM. It is really great for graphite, for charcoal, and because it's so thick, it's also really great for wet media as well. So the first thing that I'm going to do when I go straight in and do the eye is I'm going to start putting some of my contrast in. And don't be afraid to use black, because we will be layering other colours over black, so it won't have that kind of dull kind of look to it, because we'll be putting other colours over the top. So it's a really good idea to keep your layers really light in pressure and consistent as well. We're going to be doing a lot of blending in this drawing, and for this particular exercise I'm not going to be using any solvents, so we're going to be needing to create really smooth layers. So lots and lots of different colours will be going into this eye. It's interesting how a green eye also has lots of mustard colours and golds and blues in there as well. Now I'm using a toned grey paper, even though there are some white highlights obviously in some of the areas in the eye, like the reflections, and also there's going to be some highlights that we'll be putting in the way some of the light catches some of the eyeshadow in here. But not to worry, we're going to be going in with a jelly roll pen to do those. Sometimes it's really nice to start with a toned paper. There are lots of us that don't always want to be starting with a bright white canvas, and it does make your work go a little bit quicker when you already have a mid-tone there to begin with. So this is a really nice grey paper. Not only is it thick and have a smooth surface, it has some very tiny little flecks in there as well, so it's a kind of interesting surface to work on. I like to keep my pencils really sharp, especially for the kind of detailed work that I like to do, and especially for very small areas. And this eye has so many colours in. It has greens and blues, and it has golds, and it has some black in there, and also some highlights. So it's great to keep your pencils super sharp. So for now I'm just enjoying using the metal sharpener. It doesn't give the really long sharp points, but it does get them super sharp. In the very center of the eye here, it looks like the model's photograph was taken looking out to a window. We can see some panes of glass in there, and we can also see some clouds behind. So I'm going to be putting some blue in the very center of the eye to highlight some of those clouds. When we are first beginning with colored pencil drawings, it's really quite easy to be afraid of putting lots of contrast in. We'll be putting lots of contrast in as we build up the layers. There are lots and lots of eyelashes in this particular reference material, so I found this one really fun to use. The model was obviously wearing lots of makeup, so we're going to be having fun putting some really thick eyelashes in here. It's really tempting in the beginning to press hard, but the surface of the paper can only take so many layers, so we're going to be doing like 3 or 4 layers by the time we're finished, so a light hand is really important. Some artists talk about an ugly stage, and certainly most drawings or paintings go through this, where an eye doesn't really start looking like an eye, or flesh doesn't really look like flesh, because we think, oh, there's too many pinks there, or there's too many peaches, or there's just too many individual parts and it's not really coming together. And it's really easy in the early stages to just think that you're not doing a very good job and to maybe abandon it and try something else. But in my experience, it's really worth persevering past this ugly stage, because all this ugly stage really is, it's just the early stages and nothing more than that. It's just an unrefined piece of work, that's all. There are no errors in there necessarily, and so we just want to keep going, keep adding to it, keep refining it, putting more colors in, adding the contrast, layering over the layers, and soon it will all start coming together. So here we're putting some little clouds in behind the windows in the eye, adding some little areas of the wrinkles that naturally occur under the eyes, all of those little details that make a drawing look so realistic. And really long eyelashes in this reference material, which was really fun to do, and really clumpy eyelashes as well, so lots of mascara in there. I like working with coloured pencils because it's a very clean medium. There's hardly any smudging that goes on, so you can work your way around the drawing without having to stay in one particular area, unlike charcoal or pastels when you have to work from maybe the top left down to the lower right if you're right-handed to stop all the smearing that takes place. I'm also using right here in the video, I'm using a colourless blender that's made by Prismacolor, just to do a little bit of extra blending since we're not using any solvents in this particular piece. So here we have the reference material, and we can see how there's some really lovely shades of dusky reds and pinks going in there. We're building up a lot more areas in the colour, a lot more greens and a lot more blues, and we've got some eyeliner going in here as well, and we'll be putting in the highlights towards the end. I just used a piece of charcoal. I used a piece of charcoal here, a charcoal pencil, just to get the darks really dark, but for the most part I'm just using the black Prismacolor. Of course, we're not trying to get all of the eyelashes in here one by one, and neither are we going to do that on the eyebrows either, but we're going to just be seeing it more as shapes. And this is a Sakura Jelly Roll pen, and this gives really white whites and is great for the contrast in all of those glittery highlights in the eyeshadow. You can go overboard with this, to be honest, and there are a couple of places where I felt like I did too, but you can go over it with coloured pencils if you need to knock it back a little bit. It's a little tricky using this jelly roll to work on lines because it doesn't always go on really smoothly on the top of the waxy surface that these coloured pencils have, but it's excellent for little dotted marks. Again, a light pressure. And this area here is an area that I felt became too white, so I fixed that later with working some coloured pencils on top. Using circular motions, and there are many different ways to blend. You can blend with just coloured pencils alone, or you can blend with a solvent, or you can blend with a colourless blender, or you can blend with a special pen that's made by Prismacolor that I guess lays down some solvent within that. But for this, I just wanted to do a dry blending process. I found the eyebrows quite challenging to do. it can be quite tricky to get the very fine edges in there, so you have to just lift the pencil as you come off the page for those hairs. No blunt ends. And there was some brown there. I think it's some makeup. And again, don't be scared of putting quite a bit of contrast in there. I used a couple of different whites in here. I used a Derwent pastel Chinese white, but it didn't work too well. Now I'm using the Prismacolor white, and I also tried a General's white, which is really great on sanded surfaces, but not so good on the smooth surface that this Strathmore toned grey has. And you do want to be careful of putting light layers in, because there gets to a point where the surface can become quite slick because you've added too many layers and you can't add any more on top. And sometimes, surprisingly maybe, I like to work upside down. I think it tricks the eye and you can see things a little bit differently than you can just looking at things from the same angle all the time. And this is true for any medium that you're working in. You can maybe see some of the areas that need a little bit more work, some of the areas that you might have done maybe a little bit more work on that wasn't necessary. So here is the final result. I hoped you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching.